Big Blue House is a classic Jim Henson joint. You got a man in a costume puppeteering an animal that is far too big for a regular person to act as, with puppets all around him having a time and a half teaching things, like about seeds or fixing things around the house or mail, I guess. Also, Bear comments on your smell at the start of every episode, leaving me to assume that he's an olfactophilian.
Hey, what's that smell? I know that smell. Like somebody just smells like it's you. It's you. Breakfast. It's you. Tell me. You just outside. Tell me. It's you just climbing.
Generally a person who really gets off on smells. The show ran for 9 seasons. 9 seasons? That's more than 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd and My Name is Earl combined. Anyways, the show takes place in Bear's not-so-humble abode, the Big Blue House. And that's sort of what I want to fixate on today. That Big Blue House. He has to own that house, right? Because why else would you have a house? You gotta own it, gotta have land. So, I posed one of the most adult questions I've ever pondered to myself. What's Bear's mortgage like? The funny thing being, a mortgage is probably something I will never have to deal with because, I'll probably never own a property and have to deal with a mortgage because, old people fucking that shit up for us. One of the first things I had to figure out was how tall Bear actually is. This way I had a sort of measuring stick to figure out the dimensions of the walls in Bear's house. This was hopefully to create some sort of safety net for me in case the house dimensions were a little fucked up and the rooms were a little funny shaped. And, spoiler alert, they were. Hate whoever created the house. It is designed like an insane person with the weird angles for some reason. The issue with trying to figure out Bear's actual real height is that there aren't really many shots with him in full frame, and even if you could find one, what would you be measuring against? You have nothing to play off of because everything's using funny numbers in TV shows most of the time. I mean, get ready for the square footage of this house. It's huge. But thankfully in 2002, for some reason or not, he did some sort of pre-taped pre-game ceremony at the now destroyed Shea Stadium. And because of this planned shoot, he is seen standing next to former Met great Joe McEwing. Joe McEwing is the definition of a replacement level player. The stat WAR stands for wins above replacement, and it's a way to measure how much value you bring to your team, whether it's positive or negative. 0 is the baseline, that is replacement level. If you are 0 or anywhere within a reasonable measure of 0, you are a guy that is just there to step in. Your replacement level, anyone could take your spot just to see if they were better or worse than what you could produce for the team. For his career, Joe McEwing's WAR is 0.8. That's as close to replacement level as you're probably going to get. Sure, you could say round up and say it's 1, but that's still very less than average. I think what is it? I think 3 wars you're a starter, and then 5 is you're an all-star. I think maybe all-stars 3, and then 1.5 is starter. I don't remember. Funnily enough, in 2002, when he was standing next to Bear, was his worst career WAR at minus 1.1. But luckily, he serves his purpose here. He only has 5 videos on MLB.com, all of which are him as a coach and not a player anymore. He doesn't even have any real highlights on YouTube except for one weird montage of him hitting a double off of Randy Johnson entitled Joe McEwing Owns Randy Johnson, which he doesn't really. I guess it was more that the Mets in 2002 owned Randy Johnson. Thankfully, he did not turn down the chance to stand next to Bear, so we can use him as the first measuring stick to get our next measuring stick. We have Joe McEwing standing at 5'10", if his Baseball Reference page is anything to go off of. And Bear's a head taller than Joe McEwing, maybe head and a half. So that puts him maybe at 6'2", if I'm being generous. And assuming that bear is a brown bear and not a grizzly bear, this puts him at a reasonably sized bear that generally are between 5 to 7 feet. So thank you, Joe McEwing, for standing next to Bear in 2002 and teaching him how to swing a bat, even though the costume would only allow him to use one hand to swing the bat. So, now that we have that, let's talk about the house. The Big Blue House. It has 5 rooms, has a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, a kitchen, and an attic. You can kind of count an attic, and during research on how to calculate square footage, attics are tricky when you have to count them or not. They have to be qualified as finished attics, which essentially means they are properly insulated and have airflow. I have to assume it's finished because the wiki for Bear in the Big Blue House qualifies the attic as a room, so I did so here. I mean, it technically has 5 rooms. It states there's a 6th room in which Ojo, a bear cub, lives in. They never show it, and we have no idea where it is. And I have no idea where it would fit in the house. So we're going to ignore that room because I'm not going to pretend to put a room in which there is no space to put a room unless it's a Harry Potter type situation under the stairs. There is the question of another tenant that lives in the Big Blue House, which is Tutter, a mouse who lives in a mouse hole in the kitchen. I don't know how big his space is, so I can't calculate this weird small space. And if he does live here, does he pay rent to Bear? And if so, does that make Bear a dirty capitalist landlord? I'm not gonna pay attention to this right now. Let's ignore that and focus on finding out the square footage of the house. First, we have to do is find the dimensions of the rooms. For the width, that's something we can easily figure out. The length, though, we're going to have to get a little creative for. I could have just made them perfect squares, but I wanted to attempt to get it as close as possible. I just called a square perfect, even though all squares are technically perfect. So ignore I said that. The reason I said finding the width was very easy was because in the opening of Bear in the Big Blue House, the house opens up to reveal all 5 rooms to us. And with that, we are able to approximate Bear's length in relation to the house. When he's standing at the doorway, there's some clearance above his head. So with that, we were able to line him up with the doorway and then line him end to end from the wall to figure out how long it is. As I stated, Bear is 6'2", or 74 inches, so we can use nice round numbers while doing this math, and then we'll convert back to feet once I have everything figured out. End to end, the rooms are just about 3 bear wides. There's like a little bit of cutoff at the end, so let's just call it, let's just lop off 2 inches from that. Doesn't really make too much of a difference, but, this house is hilariously big anyways. It doesn't matter too much. And so what we end up with that is 220 inches. This was the easiest thing of the whole process because these rooms are not, as I said, squares. They're rectangles, but just barely not squares. They also have weird angles for a lot of them, and even the living room has a weird nook that has to be accounted for. It's very annoying. So I watched as many episodes as I could to get a rough approximation of the floor plan of the house and sketched it out myself on a grid. This is as rough as can be. These might be wrong. This might be correct. Honestly, it's hard to judge how deep the house is. So I had to take some guesses based on how big things might seem to be for me. But also, if the house ends up being big, it should be. It's called the Big Blue House, so, who cares how big it might be? So please don't mock me if my numbers are hilariously wrong. I'm not an architect, nor am I a mathematician. Haven't taken a math class in 12 years. Haven't really needed to use any real difficult math in 12 years. And this was the first real math I had to do since high school, man. So I roughed out the floor plan and luckily stumbled upon 10 squares long is about how long each room is, and that gets us about 22 inches a square. And so when I figured out how long the walls were at the side, I had about 9 squares, and so 9 times 22 is 198. So we have our dimensions of 198 by 220. I have to read this out because I'm not going to memorize these numbers. These are a lot of numbers. So obviously to get area, it's length times width. So we have 43,560. But that doesn't account for the weird fifth wall in the back left of Bear's house, nor does it account for the nook in Bear's house in the back as well. Also, in his living room, he has a swing. It's not important, but I don't really know why he has like a literal like bench swing in his house. That's a bizarre thing to have in your house. But anyways, to figure out how to add this area and also subsequently subtract the area that is cut off from the room now, first to subtract, I had to figure out how the area of the triangle. Luckily, since it's an equilateral triangle, it's very easy to figure out, which is find out the area of that square it resides in, which is a 3 by 3 square, and then divide by 2 because that's how much it is. You have that, and then for the nook to add to that area, it's just another 2 by 2, so it's 44 times 44, and you have that, and you add those together and subtract as needed. And so the new area for the living room is 43,318. This was the easiest room. The kitchen is a tad longer than the living room, and the bathroom is also a tad longer than the bedroom, but that's an easy way to figure out. I accounted for that in my measurements, so let's walk through this very simply. I started off with the 43,560 area I had from the last room and added and subtracted where need be, such as the extra little space at the front and also subtracting all that area in the back. Subtracting and adding where need be, we end up with 36,784. And together we have a total area of 80,102 for the first floor. If you're wondering why I'm not doing the hallway, it's because hallways aren't accounted for square footage. I know. I thought they would be too, but I guess square footage is only accounted for living space and not total walkable space of the house or apartment you're living in. This is a completely useless life skill I will have now because I will never own a house. Second floor, same as the first, but I like to point out how stupidly shaped the bedroom and bathroom are. Who in their right mind would shape rooms like this? This is insane and a complete waste of space, or not utilizing the space you have available to you. Also, Bear's bed is way too small for a fucking bear. But I digress. While doing all the math I had done before, the bedroom comes out to 37,984 and the bathroom 36,031. And as I've stated, I'm counting the attic as a room, though attics only count if they are a finished attic. But I'm calling it a finished attic, I don't care. But I would like to ask, how did the stairs on the second floor that go left go into the attic where you walk with your back towards the front of the house? There's no room. It doesn't make sense. Luckily, since I had done the dimensions of the hallway on the first floor, because I thought I had to figure out the area of all the space in the house. But since I didn't, I had this number lying around. But luckily, the attic and the hallway are essentially the same dimensions, which puts us at 21,780. So now that we have all this area to account for, we add it together to get total area of 175,897. And so we divide that by 12 and we get a total square footage of 14,658. I put in a guess on how much I thought the house was going to sell at. I roughly put it at 750,000. My mother said that was too high. I thought that was too low. Or at least I skipped around. I didn't know if it was too high or too low. I literally had no idea. So I said 750,000. So now we have the area of a hilariously large 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. It's like someone made it in The Sims. I tried to go on Zillow to find a comp house. I looked in Montana, specifically the northwest of Montana, because that is where brown bears currently live in the contiguous United States. And surprising to literally no one, there's no house like this within this square footage or bed and baths. So I had to call an audible. I called my mother for help because she was a lawyer who worked for banks who typically dealt with people taking out loans for houses. And so that lawyer, who I recently thought could actually help me for once, was of literal no help. She did the same thing I did, but on just different websites. She then stupidly said to me, "Hey, why don't you just find a barn to buy?" Which, how was I going to do that? My mom didn't understand the numbers I had given her. She thought they were too small. But when I explained it to all my friends, they said, "No, this house sounds about right." So realistically, the woman who birthed me did not understand my art, and on top of that, was of literal no help. So my mom is officially a dumb idiot. But thanks to my friend who created the Minecraft meme, Herobrine, he was able to find a website for me called costtobuild.net, in which you could enter in figures to build a house at cost. I'd like to reiterate that the man who created the meme Herobrine and has been living with that curse his whole life was of more help to me than my mother, who is a lawyer, who was very, very high up in the chain at her law firm. He was more help to me. Nature's healing, I guess? So I plugged in the numbers that I had figured out into the website. I had to make some guesses to materials on what was used to build the house. I kind of kept it either in tier 1 or tier 2, depending on what they were asking about. I didn't want to think too much about granite or slabs. Hey, let's just keep it nice and easy, you know. And with all that figured out, at cost, the house would be $1.2 million to build. Assuming that the house is probably just on an acre of land. He could be owning that whole forest. I don't know. He's in a forest. I don't know how much land he has. So let's just do an acre. To save me some more math, you can actually just look up how much an acre of land is in a given state. If you just Google and you find the PDF document that I found. And in Montana, it's $53,000 to buy an acre of land. This is for farm or building purposes. So we have a general cost to build. So we can figure out a mortgage, can't we? And currently the traditional mortgage period is for 30 years. I did for 3%. I didn't really care percent-wise. Who gives a shit? That's for credit scores, and, you know, that's a whole big pyramid scheme. I'm not going to get into that. But with the mortgage calculator, we were able to figure out that Bear is paying $5,327 per month to live in his house. But obviously, since we live in this capitalist world, you're not building things to sell at cost. That's ludicrous. Why would you ever want people to be able to afford things? You want to make money. So in 2019, you could just Google this. The average profit for a house sold was $65,000, which is a lot less than what I was expecting. And funnily enough, as to rub it in my face even more, that's the highest it's been in 12 years. People are not selling houses for profits that I thought they were. Maybe $65,000 is a lot more than I'm thinking. I guess when you're also making back however much on top of that you're getting on the house too, it matters. And if assuming you're selling a house because you're downsizing, so really you're making a lot. But hey, whatever. Sorry, I'm getting too much into this. So we add the supposed profit you'd make in today money into the calculator, and now he is paying $5,603 per month. But that's in 2021 dollars, kind of a little bit, in a 3-year period. The show started in 1997. Obviously, I can't use the money I figured out in 2019 to 2021. That's inflation exists, so we gotta figure how much it's gonna cost when Bear probably bought the house and got it up and running in 1997. So this is just me assuming Bear got everything up and running as soon as he was able to get into the house in 1997. So we take, our $1,328,891 that are from 2021, put them in the inflation calculator for 1997, and we end up with $805,230.37 of 1997 money. I'm just going to keep it a 30-year mortgage. I guess that's the regular style of doing it, and at 3%, so everything's comparable. We come out with $3,395 per month. I was technically close. I was 50,000 off from being right on how much this house is gonna be. Granted, I was thinking in the past, but unintentionally thinking about the past. So, but a win's a win, baby. Couple things I have to go over before we end this little rambling I've concocted for myself. This isn't accounting for an assumed tax break Bear is getting for owning and operating a daycare out of his own home. This is also not assuming to having a dependent that would be Ojo because she's living in the house and thereby under Bear's care. This isn't accounting for the fact that he has a mouse living in his house who may or may not pay rent. He might not just have him pay rent, just be like, I just have an orphan or whatever. I don't know how Tutters has a family, so I guess he pays rent because he'd be a dependent for other people, so he's paying rent to Bear. He's not living there for free. That's not the American way. No way. Bear or the fucking Jim Henson Company would be like, let's just have someone live there for free with no benefits going the owner's way. No, Tutter's gonna pay rent to Bear. How does Bear own this house? How does he have this money? Is he old money? Is he new money? Blood diamonds? I can't answer that. All I know is that a bear, who is probably an olfactifolian, procured $805,000 to buy a house. My friends called me a lunatic when I was trying to figure this out.